Thank you for tuning in to GrassRoots Television. Visit grassrootstv.org for on-demand community archive footage, as well as educational, inspiring, and entertaining local programming. A contribution to GrassRoots TV allows us to bring your voice to the Valley and to preserve media that will be enjoyed by future generations. Visit us at grassrootstv.org and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, and Twitter. We encourage you to support all the local businesses and citizens that generously underwrite grassroots programming and play an integral role in nurturing open communication among the residents of the Roaring Fork Valley since 1972. Thank you for tuning in to GrassRoots Community Network.
Hello, I'm Ira Bedzow, and this is The Good Life, a show that talks about all aspects of human flourishing, from physical and mental health to social and spiritual well-being. The topic of today's show is the values of success, and I will be speaking with Katherine San, who is the director of Aspen Family Connections. Katherine, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Tell me a little bit about Aspen Family Connections. What is its philosophy, and whom does it serve?
Okay, so Aspen Family Connections is a family resource centre, and family resource centres exist in many places, including actually further down the Roaring Fork Valley, but it's fairly new to this part of the valley, to the Pitkin County area. And so that's who we serve, is people with children who live in Pitkin County, essentially. It's the simplest way of talking about it. And a family resource centre can do many things, but essentially I think we do two things. First of all, but they're not dissimilar. The first thing is we connect people with resources that they need to proceed on their family journey in whichever way they need, to solve problems, to get ahead, to change things, to whatever they want. It's really up to the family. And we also have quite an extensive program that's a kind of prevention program, which is sort of parenting education, information, sharing, community building. And we've had a program of over 30 different topics that we've addressed, actually even more than that when I add it up, throughout this year. And this is we're in the second year of our existence, so we've been doing this for about a year and a half now.
And how did the Aspen Family Connections become created? What was the discussion around, what was the needs assessment that showed that there would be value in creating this program?
Well, there was actually a needs assessment, and that was undertaken at the behest, really, of Pitkin County Human Services, who have a very progressive attitude to serving families and creating strength and keeping children safe, and the school district. And it was felt that people in Aspen, in the county, have needs like anyone else. It's just a place to live like anywhere else. But they didn't always know how to get the help they needed, and there wasn't an obvious place for them to go. So human services might end up dealing with some of those families, or the schools, and they really weren't equipped to connect people with the resources that were out there. And we have a lot here. We really are rich in nonprofits and in agencies and in programs and initiatives and just, plain helpfulness. This is an incredibly supportive community, but you have to know how to find those resources, and you have to be able to ask, and you have to have a place to go. So they wanted to create a hub, and that's what we are. So.
And if it was the needs assessment was done by Health and Human Services, did they see it as a public health need, or was it broader than that in terms of a community need?
I think it's broader. I really do think it's broader. It's about community need in its broader sense. I think it's health in its broader sense. Mm-hmm. It's like, what does it take to live the life you want to live here? Mm-hmm. To be successful, you might say.
No, it's funny. It's almost as if it's perfect for the show The Good Life that deals with physical and mental health, but also social and spiritual health as well. There's that Maslow's hierarchy of needs that, while physical benefit is of importance, we don't stop there. We continue for full actualization when we can.
Right, and I always return to the notion of connectedness, because connectedness in every aspect, connectedness to your community, whatever your community is, to your environment, to your children's schools, to other people. I think that's an important ingredient in an important value behind the founding of Aspen Family Connections. And so did Department of Human Services, the school district, Public Health Department, Mind Springs Health, our mental health provider in the community. We all know that and then a bunch of others, the Buddy program is an amazing partner, Youth Zone is an amazing partner, Kids First, which is a early childhood resource center that exists in Pitkin County. So all these people came together and said, we want to work together better, and by working together better and connecting people with more things, we improve the community.
And how did you become the director of Aspen Family Connections? Like, what was your path?
Well, my path.
Well, not your whole path, just the one that goes up to.
Really, the most recent path. Well, I often say to people, I don't know that I have a ton of qualifications for this, but I have some. There are things about me. First of all, I'm a parent. I brought up my children here in this valley, so I have a pretty good idea about what it's like to be here. I've run non-profits, so in a practical sense, I know how non-profit life works. The other thing I've done, which I always think is probably my most important calling card, is that I've spent a number of years working for the Aspen Thrift Shop, which, if you don't know, is one of our most venerable institutions. I think it's almost 70 years old. It's an all-women organization. It's a very philanthropic organization. We and I'm still involved as a volunteer. We donate over $600,000 a year to nonprofits in our community. And I've been working on that grants program, so I knew a lot of people. So I'm a connector. I think if I had a job title, it might be connector, because I do know a lot of people, and that's been a great benefit. So I think that's maybe part of why they thought I might be suitable for the job.
Mm-hmm. So I saw that when the Aspen Family Connections was first created and people were talking about what its purpose was and what its mission would be, that you said that successful children come from successful families, and that your part in creating successful families is by connecting people, as you are the connector, with information, services, and what's available in the community. What did you mean when you talked about success in terms of successful families or successful children?
Well, I feel very strongly that there's no recipe for success. I think society might lead us to believe that, whether it's you need a nice house or you need a fancy car or your kids need to go to Stanford. There are all kinds of values that people and definitions of success. I think the key thing is it's up to you as a family. Like, I wouldn't come and say to you, Ira, this is what you and your 3 beautiful daughters need. This is the path you should take. I really think that families should define their own terms and their own values. And our job is not to comment on those or really, have a view. It's to help them get to where they want to be. And if things aren't going right, people generally know that. I mean, one of the things I say if I meet a family that's really experiencing conflict or crisis of different kinds, I always say they didn't dream of this when they were a kid. They weren't thinking, how can I have this, chaotic, difficult, stressful life. They imagined, I don't know, whether it was their white picket fence and their house and their kids and their dog. And I just think it's really important to listen to families. So family voice is a key ingredient of what we do. So that we don't have the answers for anyone. I don't know what's right for you. Just as I don't even know what's right for myself, frankly. But we're all on a journey, and I think that as a hub, as a connecting organization, our job is to help people get to where they want to be. And we might have ideas. We might say to them, for example, your child isn't getting on very well with you at the moment. Have you thought of finding them a buddy through the buddy program, so they'll have another adult in their lives who isn't their family, so they can develop a healthy adult relationship with someone else? And that's an amazing service that exists for free in our community, and we can make that referral and connect you. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, we might suggest things to people, but really it's their call. We're only there to do what families need.
And so one of the obstacles that I see of success is not only about opportunity or resources, but sometimes it's even in the psychology in terms of people realizing that success is possible. How does Aspen Family Connections reach out to those people who can be successful but don't realize yet that they can be?
Well, I'd like to think that everybody can be successful. People, however, we all deal with a great deal of stuff in our lives, and we know that this is not the easiest place to live. I would argue that most places are quite difficult to live in the modern world, that life is stressful, that work is stressful, but there are some particular things about living here that I think make it quite challenging. First of all, as we know, some of the infrastructure, housing is expensive and scarce. Work could be irregular and seasonal and precarious. There's also a sort of Aspen effect that I often see, which is that people don't find it easy to ask for help here. We're all supposed to be very, very grateful, and of course we are, because we have these mountains and these amenities and this possibility and these incredible schools, and we're all supposed to sit around and say, well, good for us. But actually, it is quite hard living here. We know that there's a high degree of mental illness and substance use and substance abuse in this community. We know there's a lot of stress and anxiety. We know that kids face a great deal of academic pressure, of other kinds of pressure. And we all have to look great. We all have to get up at 4 in the morning and skin up a mountain. I don't know if you've engaged in that pursuit, but...
I wouldn't call it skinning. I would say struggling up a mountain.
Right, well, when I moved here from London, I was amazed that people did that kind of thing. And it made me feel immediately a little bit inadequate, because I didn't even know you could go up a mountain on skis. And I'm being facetious, but not really, because I do think that we set ourselves very high standards here. The Aspen, idea is a wonderful thing, but it could be a little bit oppressive. So I think, I think our job is to help people along their continuum of family life. And if they're struggling with something, it's okay to ask for help. And that's, I would say, the hardest thing. So for me, a definition of success might be the ability to ask for help.
Given the difficulties of living in Aspen, what is the value of trying to have people stay living in Aspen as opposed to moving elsewhere?
Well, for that you would have to, look at this community. I mean, my husband moved here. He said he moved here because there were 2 hardware stores, and that was his definition of a good community, a place where all year round there are people and there's activity and there's vibrancy and there's life, and we're not completely a bedroom community, even though a huge number of people who work here and contribute to the value of Aspen don't actually get to live here. But let's think more broadly of our valley. We want people to be able to live wherever they want in this valley, ideally. And I think, I don't know, I think that's an easy question. I mean, I think we should want people to live here.
No, I'm glad it was an easy question, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it's an obvious answer, isn't it?
No, so it's interesting because, you mentioned one of the ideas of success is being able to ask for help. Sometimes the difficulty asking for help is people see themselves as taking from others or unable to give back in return, where the difficulty of community life anywhere is also the opportunity of community life, where people live in relation with each other. They don't just live next to each other.
Well, there's a huge amount of volunteerism in Aspen, so I think you're right. I think one of the difficulties of asking for help or perhaps even articulating that not everything is perfect for us all is that there's very little, and there's very little privacy, what I call privacy, what you call privacy here. It's impossible, largely impossible, to leave your home and not run into someone you know. If something happens to you, everybody knows about it immediately. People fear judgment. In my experience, actually, there isn't that much judgment. I mean, I haven't encountered a lot of that. I think we are a forgiving community, but it doesn't always feel that way. And I just think that asking for help is an enormous strength for people to call someone they don't really know and say, are you able to hook me up with some services? Can I talk to you about what's happening to my child? Is a great strength. And I've seen so much receptiveness in this community to people asking for help. This is an incredible place. People want to help each other and be helped too.
You mentioned listening to family voices. How are those family voices expressing themselves? Is it top down from parent to child? Is it collaborative from child and parent having equal say in families? What is the dynamic of those voices that you're listening to?
I think it comes from everyone, and I think that everyone has a voice. And one of the important things about the program of Aspen Family Connections is that we really listen to the whole family. So when we might, for example, receive a referral about a child who's struggling some way in school, and the person referring might be a school counselor, says, we think things aren't great at home. So our strategy and the mechanism we use is to have a family meeting. And what we try and do is work with the family to bring everyone to that meeting who might possibly be able to help them to begin with. And, we can add to that. But if, for example, they have a great pastor in their church and somebody who really supports them, we'd want them to be there to help support them. If we think that Mindsprings Health, which is an incredible community mental health partner, can assist the family with family counseling or therapy for a person, for an individual, we'll bring them in, that kind of thing. So we bring everybody together, and then we listen. But when we listen, we're not just listening for that child. It's not, okay, tell us what's going on. We think, well, do other people in the family need help? Is dad struggling with a drinking problem, or is somebody out of work, or is somebody sick? What about their siblings? Siblings are often invisible, particularly when they're younger. Everyone's like, oh, the little one's fine. But maybe not, A part of what we do is not just deal with people's immediate issues, but we think preventively. That's our job, is to think about what can we do to ensure that things go well now and ongoing, and how can we help these people to be sustainable? So we're not just sticking a Band-Aid on whatever's going on right now, but we're giving them some tools, giving them access to some stuff that they need for the future.
And how does that work? I can understand when you see an acute need, or when families come with an acute need, to provide them with opportunities or resources and so forth. But then is it a matter of proactive follow-up on Aspen Family Connections, or do you have a high retention rate of families who have been helped who now want to be invested in through these connections?
I think it swirls around. We case manage, so if a family were to come in and chat with us about something pretty, like I need a summer camp for my kid, we'll be following up, just to make sure that the resources we've given them have worked out, for example. There are some families who need a lot of case management. I mean, it ebbs and flows, like in life, things will go a bit better and things might take a little bit, go back a bit. Our goal is to keep everybody moving forward, but, inevitably it's a kind of mixed picture.
Right. And the families that you connect with or provide connections for are in Aspen all the way through the Roaring Fork Valley.
They're Pitkin County.
Pitkin County.
So Pitkin County is a kind of weird and wonderful geographic specimen, because it includes a good part of Basalt, and then it includes some outlying communities, Redstone, Marble, Meredith, Thomas. I bet you've never been there. But people live in these fairly remote parts of the county, and they also need and deserve support. So we do our best.
Have you found
to reach them.
Have you found certain trends in terms of what types of supports people are needing more often than others, or certain demographics needing more resources than others, or how, given your swath of demography, we have you been finding?
Well, I have to be careful because we've been doing this a year and a half. So I really don't want to. We do our best to collect data, and we think about things. I don't want to be. I have to be careful generalizing based on a year and a half, because we still have to get to know our constituency, and we're still learning what people need. I would say the highest and most obvious trend, and it's not a surprise to anyone, relates to mental health. And I use mental health in its broadest definition. I don't know if you know Andrew Romanoff, who's an incredible mental health advocate in the state of Colorado, and I've heard him say that mental health and substance abuse are really the same thing. So I'm using that general, broader sense. Mental health is a need. People have a need to talk, they have a need for therapy, they have a need for treatment, they have a need for individual work, for family work, for their systems, I would say that would be the largest trend. And I would also say that that's very much reflected in the services, in addition to us, that have been funded by Pitkin County, Aspen Valley Hospital, the police department, in terms of coalescing their funding and support for mental health treatment in the community. So there's a lot of work being done to connect people to those resources, to make them more accessible, to make them available when people can't pay. So that's part of I would say that's the number one trend.
And have you found that your focus on mental health matched the needs assessment for Health and Human Services, or has there been a broader need than the needs assessment wasn't aware of?
I'd like to think so. I don't know that we've picked up on things that people didn't see coming. What I like about what we do is a sort of what I call the messy vitality. So, yes, of course, there's some of that, but then sometimes you can make a difference in smaller ways. I'll give you an example. So, I've been working with a young man at a high school in the Valley, and he has lots of struggles in his life, and I won't go into those. But one of the things his therapist said is that he might really do well with a bike. He needs a bicycle. And that was an easy one for me, because obviously there are lots of people around here with bikes. But I found an organization that's called Roaring Fork Cycling. This is a fairly new nonprofit. And their mission is to connect young people to health and, success through bikes. So they didn't just give them a bike. That's not the way it works. Their program is so much deeper than that and more profound. So they gave him a bike, but they also required of him to do some sessions with a bike coach, to go out and actually learn to use his bike. And I think that's genius because it provides instruction, it's some responsibility. It's not just here you go, here's a bike, an engagement, a skill, a piece of adult mentorship, all in one. It's like the beauty of this simple activity is incredible. And the fact that we get to do things like that and think out of the box and, think about what would this particular person need is what makes my life so rewarding. So there's no cookie cutter for this.
It's so interesting. I see two great values of that example. The first is usually someone with a hammer sees everything as a nail. But the more tools you have in your toolbox, you don't have to see everything through that one nail, if you will. Having Aspen Family Connections involved with so many different organizations allows even those organizations to be more creative, as opposed to just deferring for you to be creative. They themselves can become more creative themselves.
This is their mission, so that's exciting for them, and it's incredibly rewarding for us. And who knows, maybe you change a life. At the very least, you affect a life, and you open a window for somebody whose windows are pretty stuck closed, And it's also absolutely organic to hear. I mean, what's more, Aspen than getting on a mountain bike?
Well, so that goes to the second value that I see, is a lot of times we see big problems in terms of big monoliths. And big monoliths are hard to knock down. But if you can see, or if you can show that big problems really are made up of so many different smaller components, you can start working off of those smaller components that it's easier to then deal with a bigger problem. It's almost as if you talked about skinning of a mountain. You don't have to look at the whole mountain, you just have to look at the next step.
That's exactly right, and I love the way you describe that. And I think that's sometimes we feel defeated. I mean, everyone feels defeated. I mean, if you some of the stories that we hear, people are dealing with some very big things. But if you can start to make a difference, then we're achieving something. We're achieving something. So, yeah.
And I know that you haven't been around for so long, but how are you looking to measure your success or your impact?
That's a really good question, and I've thought about that. In a funny way, I will measure our success by how busy we are. I mean, I know it might sound counterintuitive. I mean, if you said, nobody's coming through the door, that represents success because we've helped everybody, that wouldn't be realistic. So I think success for us will be growing our ability to reach more people and to reach them better. I mean, there are communities within our community that we haven't got to yet. I mean, I would identify, for example, the early childhood community. There are lots of people here with young families. That's a stressful time in anyone's life. It represents a big transition in all kinds of, we know that that's hard. And so we have a great resource and a hub in terms of Kids First, and we have amazing preschools in this valley, highly trained professionals. So we need to work on reaching those families. And that's the biggest bang for your buck, right? Because if things aren't going well in preschool and you can help a family with their dynamics, with their resources, with their ability to help themselves, with their sustainability, then maybe we'll never see them again. And that's the goal, is like try to prevent, get in early. We're not a crisis organization. There are incredible people here to deal with crisis. We're here to help people prevent things happening or prevent things getting worse. So.
Mm-hmm. And how has been the reception of Aspen Family Connections to the different organizations that you've been working with? Have they been running to you, or have you been running to them, if you will?
I just cannot even tell you how amazing local organizations are. It's sort of invidious to name people, but there's no one, whether it's the Community Foundation or Pathfinders or the Buddy Program or Youth Zone or the schools. The schools are incredible. There are people working in these schools who give so much to young people, and it's not part of their job description. They're teachers often or counselors. So I just think we're very fortunate. We've received nothing but support. absolutely. And people go out of their way to support us and to think of ways in which they can help families that we're involved with.
And I know you mentioned that there are other types of organizations that do this outside of the Roaring Fork or Pitkin County. Have you been learning from them, or is Aspen so unique, or is Pitkin County so unique, or in general, our community so unique that it's difficult to have a cookie cutter type of...
We're not that unique. We're not unique. Don't never believe that. People might like to say so. Actually, we're just like everybody else. We might have we might have more expensive housing. We might have a different job situation. People, different stresses. We're not special or unique. There's one of the partners that collaborated in our being, if you like, is the Roaring Fork School District's Family Resource Center, and I think they've been doing that for 21 years. They're at the point where they have family liaisons in every single school in the Roaring Fork School District. That's an amazing resource, and they are highly trained, highly skilled people who work with families, who connect them with resources. So it's a slightly different model, but the principle's the same. So we can absolutely learn from everybody else. Yeah.
Well, I got to
say, it's a lot, right?
It's so
I'm
much.
sorry.
It's funny.
I can't stop talking about it because it is. I'm very fortunate that I, was entrusted with a part of this, and I feel sometimes it's a bit like surfing a wave. That there are times when it feels precarious, and we have to grow, and we have to fundraise, and we have to create a more sustainable economic model, just to be boring. But in terms of what we do, there's really nothing that can or should stop us, right? We are here to collaborate with some very progressive agencies. The Department of Human Services in Pitkin County is an incredible partner for us. It's all about getting people the services they need, whether they're economic services or mental health services. There's a lot going on here, and we will do everything we can to get them what they need.
Well, I'll tell you, what was so exciting for me about Aspen Family Connections is it highlights the relationship between the micro and the macro. For example, all of the organizations that you are working with are helping people, but there may not be a transfer of information to the people who need the people who might need the help versus people who are willing to give the help. Where you might think, oh, information given social media today, the news, people should be able to find information. What's lacking in that, and what goes to the macro, is it's very difficult when searching on your own to get to the information that you need today. Having an organization that can help you guide through the noise to get to the content is a resource that's just needed.
Right, and you say the noise is right, and the noise is pretty loud when things aren't going well. And we've all been in that situation. You're stuck at home. You've got young children. You're a single parent. Things aren't going well. That's when it's hardest. It's absolutely hardest to make a plan. And that's our job. Is just to help to say, well, think about this, and let's make a plan, and let's help you with part of that, and let's connect you with some funding, because it is possible to find funding for some of the things you might need. And where would you like to be in a year's time? And I think that families deserve to have that. One of the things about Aspen, and it is one of the things that's a bit special, people here are very disconnected from their families in many cases. I don't know about you. Well, you don't live here, but my family is a very long way away. My natural supports are my family's just not here. I can't sit across the table from my auntie and say, what would you do? Which I think is how things might be in an ideal world. So I hope that we can help provide some of that for people, or put them in touch with that here.
Has working with Aspen Family Connections changed the way you look at your neighbors, or even members of your own immediate family?
Hugely. I tell you, if I was ever tempted to judgment, and we all are tempted to judgment, I would like to think that has gone. I can't. It's tempting to say, a bad parent or a bad decision, or no. I think until you can never know what somebody else is going through. So I think that's been sometimes it's a bit like having X-ray specs and you see too much. And I wish we could do more. That's the truth. I really wish we could do more.
Well, Katherine, I wish that you can do more as well. And I want to thank you so much for speaking with me today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's been very eye-opening. I think that what Aspen Family Connections is doing is extremely important and could be a model for communities that are not dissimilar to Aspen as well.
I'd like to think so. Well, thank you so much for inviting me along.
Well, thank you. And to our audience, I hope that with this show, you've come a little bit closer to achieving the good life.
Thank you for tuning in to GrassRoots Television. Visit grassrootstv.org for on-demand community archive footage, as well as educational, inspiring, and entertaining local programming. A contribution to GrassRoots TV allows us to bring your voice to the Valley and to preserve media that will be enjoyed by future generations. Visit us at grassrootstv.org and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, and Twitter. We encourage you to support all the local businesses and citizens that generously underwrite GrassRoots programming and play an integral role in nurturing open communication among the residents of the Roaring Fork Valley since 1972. Thank you for tuning in to GrassRoots Community Network.